Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking into a really unsettling story from India about a government job test with deadly consequences.
Yeah, it's a tragic story and one that I think has a lot to say about the state of the job market over there.
For sure. And, in India, getting a government job, it's seen as like hitting the jackpot, right? It's the ultimate dream for so many people.
Absolutely. It's seen as a path to stability and security,
Yeah.
a good pension, health care benefits. It's a huge deal for families.
And this story really throws a wrench into that whole idea because three young men in Odisha, they actually lost their lives while taking this brutal 25-kilometer walking test for a forester position.
Oh, wow. 25 kilometers? That's more than a half marathon.
Yeah, it's basically a marathon, and they had to do it in under 4 hours in the blazing Odisha heat. It's just unbelievable.
That sounds incredibly dangerous, especially in those conditions.
It is, and tragically, one of the men, Pravin Kumar Panda, he collapsed early on in the test. And while the other two, Byam Naik and Ganaranjan Janea, they somehow managed to complete it, they both died later.
It's just heartbreaking. These were young men with their whole lives ahead of them, and they were just trying to secure a better future for themselves.
Exactly, and what makes this even more tragic is the irony of it all, right? The job they were vying for, it's all about protecting and preserving forests. And yet the process of getting that job ended up costing them their lives.
It really makes you question the logic behind this kind of test, doesn't it? I mean, what does running a marathon have to do with being a forester?
That's one of the big questions we're going to be digging into in this deep dive. And, there's also the issue of the government's response, which has been, well, let's just say it leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, I was reading about that. It seems like a classic case of offering financial compensation without really addressing the root cause of the problem.
Right, the chief minister expressed condolences and announced a compensation of 4 lakh rupees for the families of the deceased. But is that really enough?
It's a gesture, I suppose, but it doesn't bring back their loved ones and it doesn't prevent this from happening again.
Exactly. And while the forest minister did promise an inquiry, there's still this lingering notion of accountability. Who is responsible for putting these young men in such a dangerous situation in the first place?
It seems like a pretty clear-cut case of negligence to me. I mean, was there even adequate medical support on hand during this test?
That's what's so disturbing. There are reports that there wasn't. And, after the tragedy, the Odisha Subordinate Staff Selection Commission, the OSSC, they decided to change the test time to 4:30 a.m.
So basically avoiding the worst of the heat.
Right, but does that really solve the problem? I mean, it's still a 25-kilometer walk. Are they really going to be monitoring every single participant's health throughout that entire ordeal?
It feels like a Band-Aid solution, doesn't it? They're addressing the symptom, but not the underlying issue, which is the design of the test itself.
Exactly, and it raises even more questions about whether this level of physical endurance is even necessary for the job.
Ah,
Do foresters spend their days sprinting through the jungle?
I highly doubt it. I mean, I would imagine the job involves a lot of patrolling, monitoring, record keeping, interacting with local communities, things that require stamina and awareness, sure, but not necessarily marathon level fitness.
Right, and when you look at it that way, it really starts to feel like this test was more about weeding out candidates than actually assessing their suitability for the role.
Absolutely. And I think that speaks to a larger issue in India and in many other parts of the world, really, this intense pressure to secure a government job no matter the cost.
It's a pressure that can lead to desperate measures, as we've tragically seen in this case, and it's something we're going to be discussing in more detail as we continue our deep dive into this story.
Yeah.
So we've got this intense pressure to get a government job right. But why is it such a big deal in India?
Well, it really comes down to security, In a country like India, where the private sector can be pretty unpredictable. A government job, it represents stability, a guaranteed income, a pension, healthcare benefits. It's seen as a safety net for the whole family.
No, it's not just about the paycheck. It's about peace of mind.
Exactly. And that peace of mind, it's a powerful motivator. For generations, people in India have aspired to these government positions. They see it as a way to elevate their social standing, to provide a better future for their children. It's deeply ingrained in the culture.
But that kind of cultural pressure, it can be a double-edged sword, right? On the one hand, it drives people to excel, to work hard. But on the other hand, it can create this incredibly intense competition where individuals feel like they have to go to extreme lengths to succeed.
And that's exactly what we're seeing in this case. These young men, they were driven by that desire for security, for a better life. And tragically, it ended up costing them everything.
And, it's just so heartbreaking to think about their individual stories. Praveen Kumar Panda, for example, he already had a job in the private sector. He had a B.Tech degree, which is a huge accomplishment in itself.
Absolutely shows he was a bright and capable individual.
But even with all of that, he still felt compelled to pursue this forester position. Why? Because in his mind, a government job was the ultimate goal, the pinnacle of success.
It's like this societal paradox, right? We encourage young people to get an education to pursue their passions, but then the ultimate aspiration is still often a government job, even if it doesn't fully utilize their skills or talents.
It's like we're sending mixed messages.
And I think that speaks to a larger issue, the need for a more diverse and robust economy in India, one where opportunities are plentiful and young people feel confident pursuing a variety of career paths without this fear of instability.
It's about shifting the narrative, isn't it? Moving away from this idea that a government job is the only path to a secure future.
Exactly. We need to create an environment where individuals feel empowered to follow their dreams, to become entrepreneurs, to start their own businesses, to contribute to society in a multitude of ways.
And that requires a fundamental shift in thinking, both on an individual level and a societal level.
It does. It requires investment in education, in skill development, in fostering innovation and creativity. It's about creating a culture that values individual talents and rewards hard work, regardless of whether it fits into this traditional mold of a government job.
So this tragedy, while incredibly heartbreaking, it also serves as a wake-up call, a reminder that we need to reevaluate our priorities both as individuals and as a society.
It's a call to action to demand better, to demand a system that values human potential and creates opportunities for everyone to thrive without having to risk their lives in the process.
It's easy to get caught up in the emotional impact of all of this, but we also need to talk about accountability. I mean, who's responsible for making sure something like this never happens again?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? On one hand, you could point the finger at the OSSC for designing such a grueling test, but it goes deeper than that, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's like we've created this system that prioritizes results over people.
Yeah.
These young men, they were more than just statistics. They had families, dreams, aspirations, and now, because of this system, their lives have been cut tragically short.
And that's where the real change needs to happen. We need to cultivate a sense of responsibility at every level, from the people who design these tests to the institutions that implement them, and even to society as a whole.
We need to start asking ourselves some hard questions.
Yeah.
Are we really valuing human life, or are we just treating people as expendable resources in this relentless pursuit of economic progress?
And it's a question that goes beyond just recruitment practices. It's about the kind of society we're building. What values are we prioritizing? Do we want a system that rewards blind ambition even at the cost of human life?
Or do we want a system that values compassion, that values fairness, that recognizes that everyone deserves a chance to thrive without having to put their lives on the line?
This tragedy, it's a stark reminder that progress shouldn't come at such a high cost. We need to move beyond just talking about development and actually create a system that uplifts everyone, not just a select few.
We can't bring back those young men, but we can honor their memory by demanding better, by pushing for a system that prioritizes human dignity, a system that recognizes that a secure future shouldn't require risking your life.
We need to keep this conversation going, challenge the status quo and fight for a future where every single person has the opportunity to succeed without having to make these impossible choices.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've talked about the tragic loss of life, the flawed recruitment process, and the immense pressure that people in India face to secure these government jobs.
And we've really tried to dig into the deeper societal issues at play, the things that led to this tragedy and what needs to change to prevent something like this from happening again.
Hopefully this conversation has given you some things to think about, challenged your perspectives, and maybe even inspired you to take action in your own way.
If there's one thing I hope our listeners take away from this, it's that we all have a role to play in creating a more just and equitable world, a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
And on that note, we come to the end of our deep dive. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.